From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez and this is From the South, the morning news brief from FtS English. We start this new edition right now. Peru is preparing for a day of protests against the pardon granted to the former leader, Alberto Fujimori. Demonstrations are planned in at least 11 cities across the country. The protests have been called by the families of the victims of several massacres that happened during Fujimori's time in power in the 1990s, along with trade unions and other social movements. The relatives say the pardon given by President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski was illegal and denies justice for their loved ones. The former presidential candidate of the left, Verónica Mendoza, has called on Peruvians to join the protest. On Twitter, the leader of the New Peru movement posted a video where she says, "This 11th of January, we are taking to the streets again because we do not forget, because we do not accept paths of impunity or under-the-table negotiations, because we love our country." President Kuczynski has been accused of granting this pardon as part of a deal to save himself from impeachment. The protesters say the move will only reinforce impunity for human rights abuses.
In June of 2017, Fujimori was charged by the prosecutor's office as the author of the massacre of 6 campesinos in the community of Pativilca in 1992. With the new pardon, Fujimori will not be judged by the martyrs, even though he directly ordered the Colina paramilitary group to execute this operation.
The Colina group arrived at Pativilca in the early morning. They took people out of their houses and executed them on country roads. This case took a long time to go public, months and years, because the authorities did not recognize that the paramilitary group was responsible. There was a lot of confusion.
The family members of the victims of the Pativilca massacre have presented legal actions to apply for the pardon to be revoked. They argue that the measures didn't fulfill basic legal requirements and the case should have lasted at least 24 months.
This special pardon affects the victims' rights, since the American Convention on Human Rights protects the victims and provides them access to justice, and those who are responsible for human rights crimes should be investigated and punished.
With this presidential pardon, other cases of human rights violations during Fujimori's government could go unpunished.
The massacre at the Castro Detention Center, where Alberto Fujimori was also involved, is still under investigation, as well as the crimes of forced sterilization. With this pardon, all of the investigations involving Fujimori will be closed without any kind of results.
On January the 26th, a judicial court will decide if this new legal pardon granted to Fujimori is constitutional or not. According to the upcoming decision, the former president could return to prison while his legal situation is resolved involving these humanity crimes.
The dialogue between Venezuela's government and the opposition is set to resume in the Dominican Republic in the next few hours. Both sides have said that important progress was made during the last meetings, but that they won't be commenting on it until they have reached a final agreement. Delegates from the government and the opposition will first meet in bilateral working groups, and then with international observers on Friday. They are discussing 6 main issues to find a solution to the economic and political conflict in the country. Authorities in Chile have detected a 40-meter crack in the crater of the Chillán volcano, raising alarm in nearby communities, and particularly among specialists who are permanently monitoring its activity. Flyovers and cameras set up at the Chillán volcano have documented incandescent displays of rocks associated with minor explosions. Officials fear this kind of activity could eventually lead to a major eruption. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has posted a photo of himself on Twitter wearing an Ecuadorian football shirt. adding to a speculation about whether he has been granted an Ecuadorian ID card. The formal documentation could pave the way for giving him a passport and even a diplomatic status. However, the UK Foreign Office has allegedly turned down a request from the Ecuadorian government, stating that regardless, he still will be arrested for breaching bail conditions if he does leave the Ecuadorian embassy in Knightsbridge. Colombians are waiting to new uncertainty over the peace process in their country, after President Juan Manuel Santos suspended peace talks with the ELN that were taking place in Ecuador. We have more details in this report from our correspondent in Ecuador, Denise Herrera.
On Wednesday, Santos announced he had suspended the peace talks after hearing about the attack in the east of Colombia. It took place hours after the bilateral ceasefire expired, and hours before peace talks between the government and guerrillas were expected to restart. The National Liberation Army, ELN, spoke about a resolution in 6 points after the decision of the Colombian government.
The incident that occurred today in the east of Colombia has complicated matters. But in spite of it, the course of the peace talks must not be altered, and we have to try to find a political solution to this conflict.
The ELN launched 2 bomb attacks in the early hours against the Cano Limon oil pipeline, which is operated by Occidental Petroleum Corporation. 2 sections of the pipeline were damaged in the Arauca and Boyacá provinces. The ELN also threw a grenade at the naval base in Aruquita, in Arauca province, injuring 12 soldiers. State-owned company Ecopetrol also reported an attack in a rural area of Aguazul in the Casanare province, so President Santos decided to announce his decision on television.
I will order to our armed forces to act with force and to answer to the agreement, protect the Colombian life and honor like it's their constitutional duty.
The Colombian government had reached an agreement with ELN rebels for a bilateral ceasefire starting from October 1 of 2017 until January 9, 2018. Colombia had experienced a really difficult situation with revolutionary groups throughout their history, including groups like Revolutionary Armed Force of Colombia, the FARC, that was present in almost a third of Colombia. But the ELN has historically been a smaller group and currently has an estimate of 2,000 fighters. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
The ELN chief negotiator also said that his team is ready to continue the peace talks whenever the government wants.
Que haya una respuesta del gobierno.
We will wait for an answer from the government to see if they still want to look for a solution to what happened today. If we have a positive answer from the government, our negotiating team will remain here in Quito to start the 5th round of negotiations. But if we don't, we will have to return to Colombia. I sent the government team a message asking them how long should we wait. We don't have a problem waiting, but if they don't say anything, I will have to ask my delegation to return to Colombia.
Dígame cuánto tengo que esperar. Humanitario que esperábamos que se mejorara.
The humanitarian aspect didn't improve as much as we would want. Actually, the persecutions and killing of social leaders increased. The repression of social protests also got worse. The humanitarian relief that was the main objective of this ceasefire is missing. We are aspiring to improve the conditions for the communities with a new ceasefire.
Y a mejorar en un siguiente cese.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Opposition supporters in Honduras are planning more protests against fraud in the coming days. This comes as human rights organizations report an increase in political killings by the army and by the police.
Stories about demonstrators being killed are being repeated once again, especially in the north zone of Honduras.
When they fired the grenades, he ran away from them because he was asthmatic. Then the police started shooting at him until one of the bullets got into the left side of his chest. They grabbed him and took him into the police car. They left him there for an hour and a half, people said.
To the selected murders adds also the criminalization of human rights defenders, which is sure it comes from the government.
Out of nothing, we, the human rights defenders, have been accused of many criminal offenses, especially in my case. I have been accused of being part of organized crime and drug trafficking. They say I'm also responsible for burning down some stores.
The recent assassinations in the north zone of Honduras were performed by hitmen. The victims are people associated to the opposition, like the case of Santos Alvarado, who has been killed in the last hours in San Pedro Sula.
No es casualidad. This is no coincidence, because these assassinations happen in the cities where there are more resistance and more demands being made through peaceful demonstrations. We're talking about San Pedro Sula and all its municipalities.
For the defenders, the police and the army, their acts are arbitrary, planning for people to stop demonstrating, especially on the strike plan on January the 20th.
Mire, para empezar, ni siquiera deberían estar con pasamontañas.
For starters, they shouldn't wear ski masks. They should be identified with their badges, with their names on it. They shouldn't perform any searches without a warrant. We are facing completely arbitrary behavior by the military and police, who want to impose fear and terror.
Quiere imponer a toda costa es el miedo y el terror.
Some reporters say that some 31 people have been killed so far during the protests. More than 50 have been injured by military bullets, and more than 100 people have been incarcerated.
The Inter-American Court of Human Rights has urged the government of Costa Rica to recognize same-sex marriage. It also asked Costa Rica to recognize the rights of transsexuals to change their names and gender on their IDs, and to ensure that they receive the same family and financial rights as heterosexual couples. The International Court made the decision after an official resolution was reached, based on a referendum held in May 2016. One issue facing the Pope when he arrives in Chile this week is his appointment of a bishop in Osorno, who has been accused of protecting an alleged pedophile. Protesters in Chile say they will demonstrate every day of the pontiff's visit because he hasn't done enough to root out sexual abuse. Pope Francis has defended the bishop, saying allegations that he covered up sexual abuses are unfounded. Venezuelan and Netherlands authorities are due to meet on Friday to seek a solution to the problem of smuggling to the islands of Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao. On Tuesday, Venezuela extended its suspension of all air and sea links with the ABC Islands. That was imposed last Friday. Our special correspondent reports from Aruba.
Night is a smuggler's best ally. Landing at Aruba's main port, Barcadera, for over 2 years, illegal activities became legal. Just a week ago, in the same courtyard, customs agents allowed the passage of key resources for Venezuela's economy, such as gold and copper, which were then sold as a scrap for $5 a kilo and then resold in Europe for 70 euros a kilo. Daltra, an Aruban private business, lies behind this wall. Here, you can still see mountains of copper, iron, and steel smuggled out of Venezuela.
I'm aware that accepting these resources is wrong. Buying what's stolen is wrong. Your people are suffering, and it's wrong that our country was allowing this to happen.
But at last, Aruba's government banned sales of uncertified steel originating from Venezuela. The governor of Falcon, a state that shares over 600 kilometers of coast with Aruba, Curaçao, and Bonaire, has said that Aruba's government, by acting upon these crimes, is fostering a healthy bilateral partnership for commerce.
Es la posición más sensata, necesaria,
This is the most reasonable and necessary response, coming also from these Caribbean islands, with which we've historically had good relations. It's not a new relationship. We're linked by history and by brotherhood. We've always expected to share the fight against these crimes, and they have recognized this.
Aruba is the Caribbean's main copper exporter, despite the fact the country has no copper mines. In 2016, it exported nearly $6 million worth of copper scrap, mainly to the Netherlands, and within 5 years increased its export business by 416%.
During the last months of 2017, Mexico imported record amounts of gasoline, primarily from the United States. Analysts have warned the government's dependence on foreign fuel is raising prices and anger amongst the public.
Protests over rising gas prices continue all over Mexico. In Mexico City, a group of citizens blocked access to a gas station downtown.
This is the first gas station converted to hydrocina. It's no longer Pemex. It got privatized. We're just a few streets away from the Senate, and this is the station that sells the most fuel in the country.
People are still waiting to see any benefit from the energy reforms approved by Congress in 2013, which allowed foreign and national private capital to manage fuel distribution. They feel President Enrique Peña Nieto has forgotten his own promises.
He promised gas prices wouldn't go up. He gave his word, and not long after, prices started to go up. Something like this hadn't happened in many years. When he took office, gas stood at about 12 pesos. Now the price is at 17 pesos and is expected to reach 20 by February.
Large foreign companies are the ones that have benefited the most from the energy reform. In December, ExxonMobil opened its first gas station in Mexico, where they only sell fuel produced in the United States. Dependence on foreign fuels worsened during the last few months of 2017, when 78.3% of Mexico's entire fuel supply was imported. Out of a total of 813,000 daily barrels required by the nation, only 185,000 barrels were produced by Pemex refineries, less than a quarter of what is needed.
What's happening is a significant reduction in national production. There's a serious problem with Mexican refineries. The government has neglected the maintenance budget for them, which has led the refineries reaching productive incapacity, which then forced them to have to import more fuel.
Public and freight transportation have also faced a rise in prices. 73% of our diesel supplies are imported, and national diesel production has fallen by 31%. Undoubtedly, imports are greatly affecting prices, specifically due to the volatility of international prices and the continuous fall of the Mexican peso in comparison to the dollar.
Eduardo Martínez, Telesur, Ciudad de México.
The higher cost of food and services in Mexico has sent inflation up by almost 7% in 2017. According to the National Statistics and Geography Institute, this is the highest level in 16 years. Reports say daily food items like tomatoes are now about 40% more expensive. Airfares in and out of Mexico have also jumped. Plus, there has been uncertainty surrounding the renegotiation of the NAFTA agreement by Mexico, Canada, and the U.S., and that has depreciated the Mexican peso. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Members of social groups in the U.S. who are protesting against Israel oppression on Palestinians and trying to pressure Israel to comply with international law through boycotts have been banned by Tel Aviv from entering Israel, the occupied zones of the West Bank, or the Gaza Strip.
Ariel is a member of Code Pink, one of the 6 U.S. organizations banned from Israel who are part of the BDS movement, which means boycott, divestment, and sanction Israel for their violations of Palestinian rights.
I wasn't surprised at all. I spent all of last summer in Palestine. I stayed in Hebron City, a hotspot in the West Bank, and they started a whole campaign against me and Code Pink, saying that they would throw me out of the country because of my political ideas, for representing Code Pink and for supporting the Palestinian struggle.
Como el grupo Code Pink.
Along with Code Pink, there are 22 other peace groups in the world already on Israel's blacklist for supporting the BDS campaign.
The Boycott, Disinvestment and Sanctions Group started in 2005 and was advised by civil society in Palestine to use the non-violent tactics which succeeded in ending apartheid in South Africa.
Que tuvieron éxito en poner fin al apartheid en Sudáfrica. El gobierno de Israel
Israel's government approved on December 2017 a $75 million budget to fight against the boycott campaign. In order to fight against solidarity for Palestine, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu proposed the elimination of the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees, which sends humanitarian aid to the occupied territory in Gaza Strip. The only other country supporting Israel is the United States, where President Trump said he won't aid Palestine anymore, and according to reports, he might cancel the delivery of $125 million meant to be for the aforementioned UN's agency.
Our president basically said that he doesn't want to fund anything related to Palestine until they agree to negotiate again.
Hasta que ellos acuerden volver a la mesa de negociaciones. La autoridad palestina.
After Washington announced they would be moving their embassy to Jerusalem, Palestinian authorities decided to not negotiate peace with any member of Donald Trump's government, standing in between Israel and Palestine. The U.S.'s choice was internationally rejected with overwhelming results in the UN's elections.
Now let's have a look at some other stories from around the world.
U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed openness to the possibility of U.S. talks with North Korea, but said he is unclear if that would be rewarding.
I just spoke to President Moon. He's very thankful for what we've done. They're having talks with North Korea. We'll see how that happens. Who knows where it leads? Hopefully it'll lead to success for the world, not just for our country, but for the world. And we'll be seeing over the next number of weeks and months what happens.
In Pakistan, 2 civilians have been killed in a protest over the rape and murder of a 7-year-old girl, Zainab Ansari, whose body was found from a garage dumpsters in the town of Kasur in eastern Pakistan. The protests sparked by her death turned violent, and the police fired live rounds to disperse crowds, which killed the 2 protesters.
We are not going to bury our child until the issue has been properly resolved. We are going to appeal to the Chief Justice of Pakistan and to the Army Chief of Pakistan that everyone has daughters. And if there is any humanity, they should take suo motu action immediately.
2 Reuters news agency's journalists have been charged in Myanmar with obtaining state secrets. The reporters Yu Wa Lon and Yu Ka So U have been accused of violating the Official Secrets Act, a law dating to the British colonial period that carries a maximum punishment of 14 years in prison. Tunisian police have arrested 237 people for attacking police stations, government buildings and vandalism during anti-government protests. Clashes spread out to more than 20 towns across the country as people protest against new tax and price increases imposed by the government on 1st of January. Armed robbers have run away with several millions of euros worth of jewellery after smashing the windows of the world-famous Ritz Hotel in Paris. 5 men armed with axes smashed the windows of the ground floor of the hotel and stole a valuable jewellery display. 3 of the gang members were detained while fleeing the scene, and 2 suspects are still on the run.
The death toll from devastating mudslides in affluent communities along a stretch of Southern California coastline has risen to 17. Hundreds of rescuers are searching the wreckage for missing people after the deadly mudslides. More than 100 homes were destroyed and another 300 have been damaged. More than 50 people have been rescued already, but many places were still not accessible as several roads are still closed.
First we got burned out at our ranch. That caught on fire, and now we're flooding. So it's been, the last month has been pretty bad. This has happened before. But I think it's the worst because of the fire, because of all the burnt. There's more debris than normal, and I think all that smoke and ash, and so it just takes time. You just got to do it a little bit at a time. This is up by the house. It's 3 feet deep up there, and there's just no way to get it out till it sort of dries up a little bit, and we can keep pushing it out.
The new year has brought extreme weather events from the United States to Australia. We look now at whether climate change could be to blame.
2018 started with some stunning weather events from different parts of the world. Boston is covered entirely in snow, reducing visibility on the roads dramatically. New York, Massachusetts, and many parts of the Northeast are suffering some startling weather changes.
But what's quite clear is this is a serious storm between the very low temperature, the strong winds, the driving snow. Everyone should take this one very seriously and take precautions.
Mudslides and flooding have left at least 15 people dead in California after the recent wildfires, and including several blazes from last year, burned acres of protected brush on hillsides.
Part of the problem with this is the fire created a situation where the dirt was able to wash down. Had we still had all of the vegetation on the hills, it would not have been as much of an issue.
In Canada, the temperature dipped a record low to nearly minus 50 degrees Celsius.
The winter before, that's not like that, but this time, that's a special time because really hard for us. It's really cold.
Conditions are similar in Europe, where winter storm Eleanor swept across the continent, causing widespread damage and disruption.
I was afraid last night. I was afraid that the roofs would fly away, that the window panes would be torn off. It was really quite impressive last night.
In contrast, Australia had its hottest day in 80 years, with 47.3 degrees Celsius.
Heat this morning is almost unbearable in bed.
Is this extreme weather linked to climate change and global warming? Scientists have been exploring the link between them for years, but it was in 2017 that a group of scientists found that several extreme weather events that occurred in 2016 would not have been possible without man-made global warming. The scientists presented their research paper at the annual meeting of American Geophysical Union in New Orleans, in which they also announced man-made global warming is the cause of more and more climate problems.
And we've come to the end of this morning news brief. As you know, this and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.